Hey everybody, what's going on? So I want to give my thoughts on the Odyssey. I finally at last got to see this movie, and I'm actually happy that I got to see this movie this far out. That it took me this long to be able to watch this movie, because the majority of people have enjoyed this movie. The majority of people have nothing but good things to say about this movie, and I'm able to more or less contrast what I saw. And look, first of all, I don't know anything. I have no background information on the Odyssey, or didn't have any before this movie came out. I always heard of the Odyssey, the Iliad, but I never really actually delved into it. I've never read it, and I like Greek mythology, but I've never had the chance to be able to study or read the poem or the story of the Odyssey. And another thing I have to point out is that for whatever reason, I've never had this happen. At least I don't remember. Maybe it happened a long time ago, but the audio it was inaudible. I probably made out 30%, so like 70% of this movie I was in the dark as to what was happening. And it was only thanks to my friend that afterwards told me more or less each scene, what was being said, what was being discussed, or according to the original poem by Homer, what was supposed to happen. So I was able to more or less make out what was going on. But yeah, that sucked. And I heard that that's like a common theme with Christopher Nolan movies, and I've never had that with his movies. And by the way, I think most of his movies, if not all, are bangers. I have enjoyed all of his movies. The Prestige, Memento, which I thought was like an older movie. Caught that movie really late in my life. The Batman movies, of course. Inception. Oppenheimer was probably the only one that I have to say I didn't really care for. I thought it was a great movie. I know it's well executed, but I didn't really, it wasn't my flavor. It wasn't my preference. I gotta say, honestly, this movie was by far the worst movie that he's ever made. Easily the worst movie that he's ever made. And now that I think of it, this movie is definitely going to get nominated, and is probably going to win not just one award but several awards. And that's just crazy. I've seen that happen with Sinners, which I thought was just like a mid movie, ends up winning. This guy, my least favorite actor, Michael B. Jordan, he ends up winning an Oscar because of that. And another one is Joker, so it's bound to happen, and that's fine. I got no qualms over that. That happens. We start off with Odysseus. He's looking at his men. He's on a beach, fighting Troy for 10 years, and turns to them and says, we're going home. After 10 years, we're going to go home. So they make a little pit stop on the way back home, the first of many. And what was funny about that was you got this black guy and this Indian guy questioning an old man that supposedly is speaking modern day Greek. And there isn't like a single Greek person in this thing, which is fine. I don't care about the controversy with Elliot Page and Lupita. That doesn't bother me. Just give me a really good interpretation of these characters, and I'm a happy guy. And I gotta say, I think Christopher Nolan wanted to make a comedy. Like, that was his like probably lifelong dream. And I'm a little bit disappointed that he didn't go all the way with this movie, because this was his chance. This was the opportunity to be able to go all the way in this movie, because this was like two slapstick jokes away from being a comedy, in my opinion. That's why I enjoyed it. If I enjoyed it, it was for no other reason than it was a funny movie. I just feel kind of let down that he didn't go all the way in this movie. So after that pit stop that they make, where they're getting supplies, they end up hitting the Cyclops Island. And that was probably the only scene, I think, in the entire movie, or one of the very few scenes. I can't say it was the only one, because there was several scenes. It was the only one that had some seriousness to it, and it was horrifying, especially the screams and the bellowing of this giant. Just everything that was happening inside the cave when they ended up... he ended up closing the cave, and they decided that they were going to spend the night there. Some aspect of that, because of the way they delivered a lot of these lines, like the one they did in this scene with the cave, it was just slapstick comedy. It was so funny. It was so good, because there's this seriousness of like, oh my god, you're going to be with this monster inside a cave, trapped. And I thought that was it, especially when they couldn't tell where he was at. And I loved what they did with the design, with the monster and everything. That was so good. And I forgot the name of the guy that was more or less acting and moving as the Cyclops, but really good job from him. He supposedly did I can't remember, for Interstellar. Oh, there's another movie that was really good from Christopher Nolan, but he does the thing when they get to the planet, and I forgot what it was called, but he plays that. I didn't even know that somebody needed to play that. that thing, whatever it was, that contraption machine that they have. But the Cyclops was great. The whole scene was like terrifying. It was, I mean, overwrought and just anxiety inducing. And the delivery from Matt Damon, and I just could not buy Matt Damon as Odysseus. He to me was Matt Damon, just like a lot of these actors were just playing themselves. And I think that was like another aspect of the movie that just suffered from that. If you were trying to make this like a grounded movie, which by the way, I have to like as an aside, I have to mention that I felt that when I heard about this movie, I thought that it was going to be in that tone, like really grounded, and it was just going to show the cruelties of war. And it was going to be a movie that was going to be just stuck in my head, just thinking about like, oh my God, thankfully I wasn't born in that time. I am so lucky to be, a child of the 21st century. Again, it was just comedic. The whole thing was just, like most of it was just funny. So the Cyclops, they end up getting out. The next pit stop they make is the giants, the supposedly cannibalistic giants. That was one of the best parts of the movie, because they had no whatsoever no weight to it. I don't know what he was trying to accomplish with that scene. It was certainly not terrifying. It was so strangely funny, because you meet this kid that just laughs at them, points at Odysseus, I think, or at the whole crew, and then just runs off shrieking and comes home with its parents or something that were, I don't know what they were doing. They were just walking the dog. They were going to the beach with their armor, which again didn't make any sense. Why would these giants need full-on armor the way that they did? It's like if the Cyclops showed up with armor as well. It wouldn't have made any sense. And I'm okay with like a new interpretation of what you're going to do with this movie. So I was open to the fact that, okay, he's throwing in basically American accents for everybody in a period piece that just doesn't work well. But maybe we've worn out the British accent, in these time period pieces. I was open to that. So why not do something with these giants? But at no point did I feel sorry for the men that were being slaughtered. Nothing. It did nothing to me. It was just like almost pointless. And if I had a word to describe this movie, it would be incomplete or hollow. Because scenes like that with the giants, where they're just devastating and just killing these guys, made absolutely no sense in this movie. I know it was the wrath of Poseidon, right? The gods or whatever, that played a minimal role in this movie. And they end that. The ships are destroyed. One little ship, supposedly, I think, survives. They then go off to see Cersei, or at least they don't know that they're going to see Cersei. And that whole thing with the little house on the top of the hill was pretty cool. I thought maybe something special was going to come out of that. And by the way, I was enthralled in this movie. I did not turn away. I wasn't bored at all. So it had that going for it. But not for the reasons I would have hoped for initially. It was for varying other reasons, comedic reasons. And they start going up to the house. And again, very hollow, incomplete, and just almost pointless. You see a lion, I think a jaguar, and the tiger, and it's not like they were like cowering in fear, because supposedly those are men, or even aggressive or anything like that. I would have preferred like some mythical animals, or at least the lion, jaguar, and tiger to be a little bit more menacing. They were just looking at them like, what's up? Like, and you, what are you looking at? And it looked so foreign. It looked like it belonged in a different movie. So they get up there, and I'm not gonna lie, that scene with Cersei changing them into pigs, I thought that was well done. That was so creepy. But then afterwards, when Matt Damon, I can't even call this guy Odysseus, because he was just Matt Damon, especially in the giant scene. I forgot to add that when he's running and telling them to go back, I thought he was gonna say something like, I thought he was gonna pull like a Wayne's World, Chris Farley, I don't know, 90s catchphrase like, holy shit balls, I gotta get the fuck out of here. It just did not go well with the whole movie, his delivery, anytime he delivered a line, most of the times at least. So he's talking to Cersei, and it's got this grounded tone to it, it's got this seriousness to it. And then when he says like, how come you didn't change her back into its human form? Oh, we don't get along. It was like, again, an attempt at making a comedy, but not going all the way through with it. This should have been a comedy. They had so much potential to be like a funny movie. So then after that, because Cersei tells him that he needs to go to the underworld, That was probably another one of those like serious scenes, another one of those scenes that I was actually thinking, okay, now we're gonna get that serious, so maybe this is where it begins. And we sort of did. I thought Elliot Page was good in that role when he was dead versus when he was alive and he gets impaled or nailed to the Trojan horse. He ends up delivering this line where, again, I could not make out what they were saying. And it was very sad because he ends up telling Matt Damon that his dad was never looked after by Robert Pattinson. So I forgot that too, the suitors. There's flashbacks. We're going back to Calypso when he's on the island trying to remember things. Then Calypso and Tom Holland and Anne Hathaway's character and Telemachus and Robert Pattinson's character, who is more or less the leader of these suitors, and he's trying to get Penelope to marry once again because Odysseus or Matt Damon is no longer there. So we get that. Not much going on. I did enjoy Robert Pattinson's interpretation of that character, and then after that we end up getting Matt Damon and his band of goons going away. They end up not being able to sail because the winds and the storms and the gods supposedly not allowing them to get back home. So they make another little stop at the sun god's island where he has his sacred cattle. And supposedly they were warned not to eat any of the cattle, which they end up doing because they're starved. Can't really blame them. And after that, finally Zeus gets upset, batters them when they're in the water, and with the final blow just splits the ship in two pieces, leaving Matt Damon by himself and his goons to die. And Matt Damon ends up getting marooned to Calypso's island, and that one was another one was a little bit confusing and somewhat comedic because Calypso is pretty much telling him to stay with her forever, but then at some other points you see her telling him, no, you need to remember, stop eating this thing. And then again going back to like, no, just have a little bit more so you can sleep, so you can sleep it off because you're being a little too much. And then finally like, no, okay, like don't eat it anymore, you got to get home. And he finally gives her the piece that he had with him, that Penelope ends up giving him, and he remembers the whole thing, ends up going back and ends up setting a plan with the help of Penelope, his son Telemachus, and they end up defeating Robert Pattinson and the whole crew. Oh, and I forgot, the Punisher was also in this, because that was absolutely the Punisher. It was like, again, he walked off from Studio A to Studio B to start making the Odyssey. So that's it. That's pretty much it. I'm sure I left off a lot of things. This movie was disappointing. If it was trying to be something that was grounded and have some verisimilitude, then I think it failed. It very, very much failed in that regard. But as a comedy, I think it was close to succeeding. Anyways, guys, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much again for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.